Hi there. I'd like to talk to you about using adjustment layers on your Photoshop files to improve your results and make things easier to edit. So here we have an image that we can work with in Photoshop, and I can show you the power of adjustment layers. So if you go back a little bit to the way Photoshop used to work, what we can do is use the image menu to make color adjustments, even dramatic picture adjustments. For example, under the image menu, you'll find your adjustment submenu. In there, you've got things like brightness and contrast and levels and curves, all the typical adjustments you're going to want to make to your picture. Let's pick one. Let's say we go to adjustments and we pick levels. And inside levels, we want to play around with the midtones of our image. So we pick the midtone slider and we make that adjustment to the right or to the left. Let's say I want to go darker. I want to enhance the midtones. And then maybe I want to enhance the light tones, even making it a little bit overexposed. Not saying this is a good edit, I'm just saying this is what I could do. Well, when I click OK, what happens? I've actually permanently altered my image. So if you look at my layer palette there, it says background image, it's locked. That image adjustment just got applied to the image, and it's what we call destructive or permanent. I have permanently altered my image. Well, I could do that progressively for a few steps, making another color adjustment. Let's say I go here and I want to use hue and saturation. And I go in and I adjust the color values. Maybe I beef up. I'm just going to go way off the wrong direction here. Yeah, I beef up the cyans and the oranges and beef it up and get it where I want it. And I click OK again, and bam, there I've got my image. Again, I've permanently altered that picture. So that's a bad thing, because what happens is you want to be able to edit that or fix that later on. And if you've backed yourself into a corner and you've permanently altered your original, that's a bad thing. So thankfully, Photoshop has included adjustment layers for a while now, and it allows you to make these kinds of image adjustments without permanently altering your photograph. So let's show you what I mean. I've got the same picture here set up in another file, and I've already got the adjustment layers set up in there, and I'll explain what each one is going to do. Also, just as a tip, it's important to remember that whenever you're working with an image, you want to make a copy first. Make a copy first. Don't ever edit your original. Leave your originals alone. Just get in the habit of leaving your originals in your photo software, like whether it's Apple Photos or Google Photos or somewhere. Keep those there, and then drag and drop and move your pictures to another working folder whenever you're going to make these dramatic edits. All right, so let me go over here to my little sidebar and show my layer palette. Adjustment layers. I'm going to go to the window menu, and I am also going to open the adjustments palette. And I'm going to go ahead and drag that over here so it's visible. All right. Each one of these little icons corresponds with one of the adjustments that was held under the image menu. So all the ones you could possibly use, like levels, curves, hue and saturation, etc., all of those are here under the adjustment palette, represented by these little icons. And what's cool is if you click them here, they become an actual layer inside your file. A layer is something that can be turned on and off, and it can be adjusted after it's been applied. So I just happened to click the hue and saturation adjustment layer. And so if I make my dramatic adjustment to my image, totally screwed up, right? Notice that that is located here on the adjustment layer. It's called hue and saturation number 2 there. And it can be turned on and off. I can go back to the original file. just by turning that on and off. Or if I double click this, the little adjustment layer icon on the layer palette, it pulls up the properties dialog box where I can go back and re-edit that image adjustment that I applied to that layer. Beautiful. So nothing is permanent now, and that's great. That means I can save and close this file, reopen it, re-edit it, no problem. I can even delete it. So you kind of have to start thinking logically as you make adjustments to your photos. Think in steps. Think, okay, first I'm going to adjust the contrast, add a contrast adjustment layer. Next, I'm going to tweak the color, add a hue and saturation color adjustment. Next, I'm going to mess with the exposure, add an exposure exposure adjustment layer. That way you can kind of tune it up. You can dial in each one as needed, and you can remove them if they go too far without destroying your image. Brilliant. I'm really glad that Photoshop added these to the toolbox. So let's see what I've done to this picture. Here's my first set of adjustments that I've applied to this photo. I wanted to get it into kind of a bluish orangish tint range. And if we look at the adjustment layers that I've applied to this file, first I started with exposure. I wanted to underexpose it a little bit to make it a little bit dimmer. Then I added a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Then I added a levels adjustment, which basically removed some of the gray tone from that overexposed image. Next, I wanted to heighten the color value. So I adjusted the blues so they became a little more vibrant. Next, I wanted to add a selective color adjustment, which basically allowed me to pinpoint the oranges, the reds, the blues, and remove the greens and yellows from the file to cool it down. Last but not least, I added a curves adjustment layer to the file to kind of even it out so it had more of a uniform tone. Now, again, I didn't go into detail on what each of those adjustment layers do. That's another lesson in and of itself, but it's important to understand that any of those image adjustments that you want to apply to your pictures to make them better, to enhance them, should be applied as adjustment layers that you can control in the layer palette so that you have absolute control over them and you have not destroyed your image. Here's the second version of that. Tried it with a little cooler tint. All right, so that's an important step in the process, using those adjustment layers to get the most out of your edits without destroying your photos and making it easy to go back in and fix and re-edit your pictures later on. All right, hope that helps. See you next time.